Okay, we are back with the show. We've been plagued with a myriad of different audio problems on the stream. I've tested things on my end. It seems like my audio device is working correctly the way it's supposed to now. Hopefully we've resolved the issue now. Hopefully we're connected properly and things can resume back to where they were. See here. All right. Just need to pull up my chat pop-up here and see if I can get that back up again. Give me a pop-out chat. That way I can see if anyone says anything. Make sure that this keeps humming again the way it's supposed to. All right, hopefully we're fully back now. I do apologize for the technical issues that we're experiencing on this show today. Everyone's patience is greatly appreciated. I know that it's been a little frustrating trying to figure out on the live stream what's going on and see if I can recall my screens again. All right, so there's our capture of Mac OS 9. That seems to be working just the way it's supposed to, which is great. That's looking the way it's supposed to. Okay, so our machines had a bit of a crash as I had to reboot everything, and so now we should hopefully be back up and running again. All right. Hopefully at some point someone will give me the thumbs up that the sound is good and that we'll be able to continue the live stream as planned. And just to give everyone a brief overview of what this live stream is about is we are going to chop a raw break, turn that into a jungle break. And I was just going to show how I would do that on Mac OS 9 using Recycle. So here's our here's me and here's the Mac OS 9 desktop. Okay, sounds like everything is working just the way it's supposed to. That is great. That was a stressful 12 minutes there trying to figure out what was going on with the sound. So now we are fully back up and running. That is fantastic. So lessons learned, just completely power down the Mac and make sure that we have completely cycled it. That way everything just syncs and connects the way it's supposed to. Okay, so going on to the program, here is my Mac OS 9 desktop. This is a live capture. This is not a VNC server connection, so this is a full 60 frames per second connection. You can clearly see that my mouse cursor is moving at 60 frames a second now. So this is exactly the way I see it on my end. Now we're booting up Recycle. So I got a couple of raw jungle breaks here. This is kind of my raw collection. Here's one of my Apaches I have. Now the one I was starting to work on was the think break on the previous stream that I had to cancel due to the technical issues we had. So I'm going to scroll all the way down. Find our think break. Now it sounds like there's a bit of like a dropout in that break. That seems just to be the way this break was put in this sample set. So I'm just kind of working with the limitation of that sample set that I have. So now we're gonna define our loop region. Drag our end slider to the end of this measure right here. And we're just going to tighten this up as well as we can. And just to see how we're lining up on the grid, I'm going to enable our grid, which is Command G. And it's going to ask how many bars is this. It's going to be 1 bar. There's our grid. And at the moment, it doesn't completely line up quite yet, but that's okay. That's kind of what we're going to be working on, is getting this tightened up as much as we can tighten it up. This is quite a bit off from the 1-2 there, or the second measure of that beat. Pull that back a little bit. So for this one, since I'm starting with the raw break, I'm not going to do my quarter note chop technique for this because it's basically in raw form and it needs to be curated into a usable break for us. Now we're just gonna, now there's 2 ways that we can do this. There's the show grid, add slices to grid, which does every 16th note. That's one way to do this. Another way we can do this, which was one of the big features of Recycle at this time, was to use the sensitivity feature where it would detect the transients. And so if we drag this slider up, it will start detecting where the transients fall, or where it thinks it detects it. And so it falls into place where it thinks there's a transient to be had. You can preview each one of them like so. I think there's a couple more transients we can find here. Can delete that one. There's the full sound. So there's another transient that should be detecting right here, but it hasn't fully picked that one up yet. So I'm just going to drag it just a little bit more. Now it's detected it. We don't need this one. That's one that we don't need. Can delete that marker. Get that out. This one's deleted over here. And okay, so we're just basically right now, if you were just tuning into the show, we're basically chopping a raw break and turning this into a jungle break. And we're just basically demonstrating on the think break how we take the raw break and then make this a jungle break. So right now, when I'm working with raw breaks, I do the transient chops. When you do the transient chops, you definitely need to be working with the MIDI file that's produced afterwards, because you'll be guessing where all these line up in your timeline as you're trying to make it into a jungle break. Now, the classical way that you would do this, like in the really olden days, like you would basically just take that raw break, you would just keep pitching it up and down on your sampler, or just fine-tuning the pitch on that sample until it sounded the way you wanted it. And then basically you would then isolate your kick and snare and basically just kind of play them out in long form like that. This is a little more precise This is the way I would do it in the box and sometimes out of the box. I don't have this connected to SCSI right now. Otherwise, I would be using my hardware sampler. So this is basically in the box on Mac OS 9. And that's the way I'm showcasing this. This Mac OS 9 is a part of my Pro Tools TDM build that I'm doing right now. So we're actually listening to the Think Break through the DigiDesign 888 interface that was for Pro Tools TDM mix. It's the old 16-bit one at the moment, which I have a 24-bit one coming soon. So when this break is chopped, I'm going to load this into ESX24 TDM, which is that is the Logic sampler that is directly integrated into the TDM environment, and then we can put TDM effects on that sampler channel in Logic. And so I'll show you that here in a second. In the meantime, we're going to chop this break, get it where we want it, save it, export it, import it into Logic, and then kind of figure out where this break's going to wind up for us. Okay, so here's another redundant transient. Just basically want to make sure we eliminate all the redundant transients that we're not going to need. So you're asking me, someone was asking me, why is there this blank spot right here in the sample? That's just one of the flaws of this sample that I have. It's just, it looks like when they took the sample, it must have like had some dropouts while they took the sample. Don't know why that is, so I'm basically working around that for this chop right now. Might drag this one over just to that. We basically want to get these transients as tight as we can get them because we're going to be speeding them up and then basically speed it up, resample it, then rechop it again is the way we're going to do this. So I think for the intents and purposes of this chop that we have, we're going to save this as a new sample. So go down to here. Then we're going to save this into our recycles file area. This is going to be the mythink. And this is, we're going to say this is about 113 for the beats per minute. So now we're going to exit recycle, and then we're going to boot up Logic. So we are using Logic 6 in the TDM environment. So we're basically using Pro Tools hardware with Logic as the sequencer and the audio recorder in this instance. Still have a lot to learn about Pro Tools 5 at this point, and so I'm still need to sit down, do a proper sit down with it, get my head around it, and then figure out what we're going to, how we're going to incorporate that into future sessions. But for the most part, my experience, Logic 6 seems to cover all my bases that I need. So now we have a fresh session. It's at the default I'm going to just now give you the full DAW view. So here's our full display here that I see on my end. I'll make the screen a little bit bigger. And we are going to open up. I should have a autoload TDM file here. And this has some kind of like preset like instances of ESX24. And here's that. So just to give you a quick tour of what we got here is these are the bridge from native plugins to TDM. There's about 8 channels in mono, 4 in stereo. So there's about 8 buses that can be sent from the native side to the TDM side, and that's what the ESB plugin is here. I'll open that up, and it basically tells you that this output is 1 and 2, and so you only have 8 channels to work with. That's kind of the only drawback of working with native and TDM together, is that you have to just be mindful that you're going to have a native side, you're going to have a TDM side. You're probably going to have to flatten those elements to bring them over to TDM fully without the restriction. So here's a ESX24 instance that's fully on the TDM platform. You got to go to Edit, Instrument, Recycle, Convert, Extract Sequence, and Make New Instrument. Now we just got to find our file and where we saved it. The samples, Recycle Files, and here's our break. It has now imported that break into the session here, and now I'm going to zoom that in as much as I can. Let's see what we get. Oh, we got to load that into the sampler first. There it is. So there's our sample. It has been loaded into Logic successfully. And now this is where we're going to play around with the pitch and just kind of dial this thing in as much as we can and see where we can take it. So I'm going to boost this to 155 beats per minute right now. Now we're at 155. I'm not sure that you can see that. So I'm going to drag that up here. Now you can see my transport bar clearly. It shows 155. Let's try pitching that up a little bit, see what we get. So there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of go with this. We can leave the tuning at its default tuning. And that's basically with the same pitch, sped up. Since we did the transient chops, it basically can like be a little more elastic in the way we stretch it without as much artifacting. This was kind of the old style way of like time stretching if you didn't have time stretching. We all know that that technology's gotten a lot better. I do like that plus 2, like someone mentioned. Let's pitch it down -2 and see what we get. So this is what the chop looks like as a transient chop within Logic here. This is what the timeline event looks like. And so things that we can do to modify it in this environment is that we can still act like things are in quarter note, eighth note, 16th note increments. You just have to be mindful of the myriads of chops that you have instead of just having like, if you were doing quarter note chops, you'd have 4 chops. Now we have, I'd think about 16 chops, just kind of taking a quick guesstimate at looking at what we got. 16 chops on a 1 bar loop. somewhere between 2 and 3 sounds kind of like that classic fake break sped up sound that you hear in so many jungle productions. But I definitely think number 2 is going to be where I'm going to settle this at. Then it's just going to be a matter of bouncing that down and reprocessing that break. And then we do another quarter notes series of chops. Or maybe we just mess with it in here. Let's see what we get in here. Just going to zoom in here real quickly so we can better see what we're doing here. Okay. All right, so maybe we decide that we want to make some alterations before we bounce this down. Maybe we want to take out our vocal samples, for example. See if this works. No, not quite. The snare chop is good. It's the shaker that needs some adjustment there. This one looks like a pretty clean little shaker right there, so I'm going to graph that over here. You know, one of the limitations of the way I'm working right now is I don't exactly have a Kaiser running on this platform. I kind of have to like take the old time stretch algorithms that are available to me in Mac OS 9 or export this to my actual Akai sampler and back to get the Kaiser effect in this platform. There are some programs that kind of have that metallic sheen stretch sound. I think Alchemy 3 kind of has it. I might play around with that in a bit later. Right now I'm just looking to see what we can do with this break. That sounds good. This is where transient chops can get kind of messy. That's sounding a bit cleaner there. That at least has a little more of a symmetrical tug and pull to it. I think I might stick with that part right there. I was trying to eliminate the yell, just that way we have a clean think break where it's just like the drum elements. There are some versions of the think where it can be used to a desirable effect. In my case, I'm just trying to give us a clean think to work with. Thing that has a nice cool bounce and swing to it. There's some keeping it symmetrical is kind of the thing when you're doing these breaks. Is the more symmetrical you can make your chop slices and breaks and smash downs, the more it's going to flow and roll and keep up with the momentum. The biggest thing when you're doing chops is to maintain momentum of the break. If you lose momentum in the break, you might need to dial it back. If you're able to maintain momentum, then that's where you want to keep it. Is you want to keep the break rolling no matter how it stutters, fumbles, flips, breaks. Just keep the break rolling. And that's kind of one of the big principles in drum and bass production, is to keep that rolling. Just running a metronome. So we've done some edits to the think break. We've taken out some of the yell sounds, which I do like them personally, but just for the sake of discussion, let's just say that we want a nice clean think to kind of like go crazy without it, and just that way we kind of have just more of the drum elements kind of like isolated and somewhat clean. We now basically have a break that we can now bounce down and re-chop and resample and remodify now that things have been kind of tightened up. And now let's just play that one more time. Things you can also do if you don't want your snare to sound like the full volume snare is you can play around with the velocity and bring that velocity either up or down. And typically one of my favorite things to do on rolls is to kind of have a velocity roll where it's just like it's a really, really fast chop and the velocity just kind of slowly goes up. And that way it just sounds like a instead of like everything just being like uniform volume-wise and velocity-wise. So we got our break. Now we just need to save it and bounce it. First, I just need to find my output channel. Got to go into the big and scary environment window here real quick. Find which channel that's going out. And you'll see right here, there's a little button that says bounce. We're going to click that. We want to set it from the first to the second bar on this project. We're going to say this is a WAV file, and it's going to be interleaved. Maybe we'll do split. So now we're going to bounce the file. Yeah, someone mentioned that you can still kind of hear that yell. I mean, you can, but we're gonna roll with it. It works. As long as it works, that's all that matters. It's about making imperfections work. It's a big part of the jungle sound. You got to embrace the imperfections because you're gonna have a lot of them during the production. Yeah, the environment window is basically like one of the universal things about Logic. Is from version 4 to now, it's basically, I think it operates a lot of the same way. You had to rely a lot more upon it in older versions. They did a lot to simplify it for most users so that most users don't have to go into it. That's going to be a whole nother video at some point, is the environment window, what you can do with it. There's so much you can do with it. It's like really intimidating and deep if you don't know or familiar with it. And the manual doesn't really help you that much to understand the full capabilities either. So at some point, that is a video that's coming up. So now we're going to save our break. Under recycle files, and we're going to call this mythink 155 because it is now at 155 beats per minute. Let's see. Okay, so it should have successfully bounced, and now we're going to, for a moment, we're going to close this. First, we want to save our project before we try to recall this. So we are now going down to projects, Logic 6, and this is going to be Livestream breaks. Close that out for a second, and then we're going to reboot recycle. Jump over to recycle files. All right. So this is the break that we just modified and chopped in the transient mode. Establish this as a 1-bar deal here. And Command G to show the grid. See where we line up here. It may have prematurely cut off a little bit of it, but I think we'll be able to make this work. We have now added 16th note. So what you're seeing at 130 is the preview beats per minute. This is the original tempo right here. This is the one that we're actually concerned about over here, is where it shows 156.512. This is if you want to play with modifications. Recycle apparently gives you this ability to repitch and do things. I still need to play with that a little more. I haven't really messed with that so much myself because I usually do that within Live or another DAW. So I'm just working with it the way I understand it fully right now. So some of the ways that we can change the beats per minute, since it kind of slightly cut off one of the end tails here, is I'd like to not have to rebalance this, but maybe we should real quick. I should extend the end of my loop real quick. That way it fully captures that last transient and should line up a lot better, and then we can get the correct beats per minute where everything's been already lined up correctly. Because if you look at that sample of the bounce down track, it kind of cut off prematurely the last tail where it would have extended a little bit further had it been allowed to play. And so since it's cut a little short, our beats per minutes are off by a whole beat per minute because it prematurely chopped off that end sample. So what we're going to do is we're going to just extend that over to here. And now it should be a more extended chop here. And then we can properly dial in if we need to extend further out, get the beats per minute right. This should now properly save. Press Command 8 for the environment window. Go to audio, scroll all the way over to the output 1 and 2. We're going to bounce this. Find where we want to save it. And then we're going to call this MyThink 155. And so we're going to replace this file. Okay. That's now successfully been bounced. Save our progress. Reboot, recycle. So now we have a lot more space to work with, so we can get things a little tighter on the alignment. In so many ways, we are spoiled with warp markers in Ableton Live, where you can just take sounds and just stretch them where you want them, and you really take that for granted until you start going back into older workflows, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't have that in this version. Live 4 does run on OS 9. I haven't installed it on this machine quite yet, but I do have that option at some point and might actually use that for working with some of the raw break materials before I send it out and make my own jungle break out of it. So back to where we were. We're going to say this is a 2-bar segment of a sample, and it shows that it's at 156 beats per minute. So now we're just going to drag this back just a little bit, or maybe not exactly that direction. Let's try going down to here. Now I'm just going to say this is a 1-bar measure. Okay, now we're at least showing 155 beats per minute. So as you can see, things aren't like this snare right here doesn't like fully like line up like you would expect it to. It's quite a ways off, actually. I might actually decide to retransient chop this. That way I can get that element just a little bit tighter on the timeline and maybe make some adjustments to that. adjusting our sensitivity on the transient detection. That way we can just get this all resliced again. All right. I think we're pretty good on these chops. These can definitely work with what we got here. Go to export this as a MyThink 155. Exit out of this. Reboot Logic. Takes a second because it's scanning all the TDM plugins on the Pro Tools end of things. And so one of the benefits when you're working in long form breaks is you can just kind of like, the break can run and you can just kind of like take the snare from one end, stitch it together, and it should just kind of like bleed into each other and then kind of like in a sense kind of crossfade into itself. With these tighter chops, things can get a little hairier quicker, so it's at times it can be a little more challenging to do it in this fashion. Okay, so now we've recalled, this is our original sample here. We're going to mute that channel. We're going to recall another instance of ESX24 right here. Go into the ESX24 edit window, instrument, recycle, convert, extract sequence, and make new instrument. Go to desktop, the drive that it resides on, your samples, recycle files, and it's going to be the MyThink 155. So there's about 13 chops in this one. And let's see what we get now. And of course you got to load samples into the sampler, like so. So in some respects, we're back to kind of where we were. Now we've just kind of baked in our tuning from the last one. So that one's kind of more free to kind of like go around where we want it. We basically just reestablished where our root tuning is for this break. And if I was to be quite honest, this is not usually the way I would do this, but just for the sake of the live stream and what I got currently working, this is kind of the way I'm improvising how I would do this process without the direct SCSI access to my samplers at the moment. Let's see if we can just do some timing correction on this. And you got to remember we don't have warp markers at this point. Might need a, see. See what we get here. D. See if adjusting the velocity is going to help us. Or maybe doing some like small rolls to kind of like fill in some of the gaps. As you can kind of see, this whole process is basically kind of one giant experiment, seeing what works and what doesn't. Let's see. Maybe if I move the kick to this point. Nope. Can kind of see how playing with velocity can kind of help roll things out. Yeah, this one's kind of kicking my butt, not gonna lie. That lack of warp markers really kind of makes this a bit of a challenge. Yeah, I'll have to kind of regroup on this one. Not sure this one's turning out the way I wanted it to, but in the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone who did come to this live stream. We had a lot of technical difficulties at the start of it, so I'd like to thank you for everyone who did make it, and for the comments, those who commented, thank you for your feedback. It definitely helps me to figure out where to guide things, take things, and I'll keep playing around with this. I definitely need to sit down and get a little better at this myself, so I'd like to thank everyone who came, and in the meantime, we'll see you next week.